youth here. They carried everything and we left here. Everything. We are here. They snatched it. We are in Tulare, Aguda, local government, Aguda, Atakiele. They carried it. Atakiele. Don't carry everything. Atakiele. We are Atakiele. They carried everything right now. Everything. They carried everything and went out. They came with Korokwe and this. They carried everything. Look at it. And put some inside this thing, inside the gutter. Look at it. Carry the units, carry everything. Look at it here. We are Atakiele, Ataguda. Atakiele. They carried everything. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. They carried everything and made away with it. Look at all the officials here. We are here. They were just shooting gun. All of us lie down flat. They even beat up some people and left.
If I give you 5,000 before you vote for me, then you sold your.
You don't concern me.
Why you not concern me?
If you there, they PDP, they enter FDP, they enter PDP.
That is how it's supposed to be. Even yourself. If not the money, if you not there anyone, your brother find every.
I have had occasion to address the candidacy of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu and Vice President Atiku. These, in my own opinion, are old men. The scripture says that old men shall dream dreams and young men shall see visions. They have not done anything, as far as I'm concerned, in any sphere, and we can begin to deal with specifics, to suggest to me that they have the capacity to lead Nigeria into the future that it needs to urgently go into. I've had occasion to mention the fact that the current regime in power in Nigeria has more or less destroyed hope. The country has never been more fragmented. All the old fault lines have been opened up. And in the midst of the hopelessness in this space, it's become almost impossible for anyone to persuade sufficient numbers of Nigerians about the preservation of where we are. So it has to be about where we are going. If it has to be about where we are going, it has to be young persons who have the capacity to imagine a different future, even though you must always have your narrative, because if you are just talking about ideals without relativity, it becomes impossible to get the people galvanized. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, the obedient movement is doing its job sufficiently. The young men and women who have invested their hopes in Mr. Peter Obi, they've invested. It's not, the man who they give shishi, he has said it severally, but people are sprouting up from the four children in the sitting room. They are getting up and they are making their voices heard. And they are making it clear that they are investing their hopes. It's about hope, because in reality, hope is the only thing that we have lost in Nigeria. Hope in the capacity of our rulers to imagine a different direction. But this man has come, he's offered that hope. He's not Voltron, he's not God, and he's definitely not going to be infallible. But it is not about his person. It is about the ideals that he will set forth, or that he has set forth, the life that he had lived, that will make enough people believe, if they do believe, and then they come together, invest these hopes in a man. If the man fumbles, it's not about the man, it's about the ideas that we would all have stood behind. If that man fumbles, another man takes the baton. The reality is that we need to be traveling in a different direction. And a large percentage of the Nigerian youth have shown clearly and are showing clearly all over the country that they know the direction they want to travel, not the direction that we have traveled all these years. It's the same direction. The two, Mr. Atiku, Mr. Tinubu, they are mirror images. It's like different sides of the same coin. Welcome to Sahara TV. With February 25 just 9 days away, the integrity of Nigeria's general election is a topic on the national radar. With us today to discuss these concerns and other factors that may impact the credibility of the process, as well as issues surrounding INEC preparedness and readiness to conduct a free, fair, and credible polls in the light of recent development, is Mark Amaza. Mark Amaza is a senior communications officer at Yaga Africa, a civil society organization that works on democratic governance and civil engagement issues in Nigeria and across Africa. It's a pleasure to have you on Sahara TV, Mr. Mark.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Mark, could you briefly tell our audience what your organization has been doing in recent times ahead of the 2020 general elections in Nigeria?
Okay, so I've been doing a lot of activities ahead of the elections, and we'll put them into mainly three buckets. So I've been doing work to ensure the integrity of the process in terms of preparing for election observation. For this election, we'll be deploying over 3,000 observers across the country to observe election in a sample of polling units. We are also deploying, leveraging on INEC's ability to transmit election results electronically to provide citizens with the access to observe collation of election results via a project we call the Election Results Analysis Dashboard, where we collect the results as they're coming from polling units and we visualize it in an easy to understand format for citizens to follow. We'll also be doing a lot of work in terms of mobilizing people, citizens to come out and vote. First, we have the 60% of us, which is targeted at young people, and our target is 60% of registered young people to turn out and vote on election days. We also have other activities such as the youth vote count. We have voting squad, where we have volunteers who are mobilizing their communities to turn out and vote. We have our community organizers in different states who are also doing the same. We're also providing support to young candidates. Yaga Africa has a bias for young people, and youth political participation and inclusion is a topmost priority for us. So we're also providing support to young candidates who are running in this cycle, especially those who are enabled by the Not Young to Run law, which we championed, to ensure that they succeed at the polls and that the proportion of young people in governance and decision-making is increased.
Fantastic. That's quite a lot of work. You highlighted the fact that your organization has been involved a lot with regards to election observation, voter education, and the use of technology. Let's take a deep dive into a recent published report by your organization on the mock accreditation exercise that was recently conducted by the Independent National Electoral Commission ahead of the general elections. May I ask, what are your observations as far as this mock accreditation exercise is concerned with regards to the use of beavers?
All right, so in the states where we're able to observe the testing of the beavers and the mock accreditation, we saw that in some instances, there were cases where there were faulty beavers machines, or there was network issues with the beavers, as well as, or in some cases where there were even shortfalls of beavers in the sense of where the beavers did not work and there were not enough beavers machines for the testing. However, what we do observe is that the election officials, so the good part is that election officials showed a high knowledge of the use of the beavers machines, which is good. And also so that in places where they were tested, there was adequate security personnel that secured the site and did not interfere with the testing. For the mock accreditation, there was a good arrival of election officials at the polling units where the mock accreditation was being done. Adequate deployment of polling officials and security personnel. We also saw that there was a good presence of party agents who observed the mock accreditation, even though in some cases the two there's a lopsidedness in the percentage of party agents at polling units. So by a report, you had APC and PDP agents being dominant there, and other parties were not as present in this mock accreditation. And in 98% of the polling units where we observed the mock accreditation, BVAS functioned properly. In the 2% where it malfunctioned, it was fixed, and the mock accreditation took place. Unfortunately, the turnout of voters for the mock accreditation was low, and we think that is due to a low publicity. There wasn't adequate publicity of the exercise that will have made voters to come out and be part of the mock accreditation.
Now, let me take you to task on this. Part of your observation had to do with the discrepancies in the total number of accredited voters uploaded by the BVAS and the total number of accredited voters recorded on the mock result sheet. Should Nigerians be concerned?
I think the objective of this testing and mock accreditation is to troubleshoot these problems before they occur, and then to begin to take the necessary steps to address them. So I would say the fact that INEC has gone ahead and done this means they are already beginning to notice the possibility of these challenges and begin to put in steps to address them, which are some of the things we also captured in our recommendations on the exercise, where we've encouraged INEC to address these challenges, especially around how they educate their polling officials on the recording and accounting of election figures, so that there are no discrepancies between the data uploaded by the BVAS and then what is recorded on the polling unit result sheets. Because even though there's the use of BVAS, there still has to be the paper results sheets are still going to be used. So they have to tally, they have to be the same. And also where the BVAS devices deployed for the mock accreditation, they should be reconfigured to read 0, so that we don't have a situation where in the field, the BVAS device are already reading figures that were used in the mock accreditation, and then have a case where at the end there's an ink is beyond the number of polling of voters in that polling unit, and which could result in overvoting or be assumed that there's overvoting.
There's been the reason why we're asking these questions at this point in time is the fact that there's been several attempts by some sections of the political class to discredit the deployment of technology in the elections. And despite this resistance to technology, these innovations tend to provide some positive anticipation on the part of many voters that the process will be more transparent and to guarantee the integrity of the elections. Does IAGA have the same optimism?
Yeah, yes, we do. We do have the same optimism. We champion the introduction of technology in election processes when doing our advocacy on the Electoral Act. And we know how, for example, in the first round at one of the voting the Senate on the Electoral Act, it was, the Senate had made the use of electronic transmission of results subject to NCC certifying that Nigeria was ready in terms of network coverage. But we pushed and ensured that INEC is not subject to NCC's approval, and that the use of technology from the BVAS to the IREF to the electronic transmission of results to all other technology that INEC deems necessary is legalized. So we do have that confidence in the BVAS. Of course, like every other human-made systems, it's not perfect, and there have been hitches here and there. But one thing we have seen is that INEC continues to learn from its experiences from Ekiti and Osun elections, where it first used the BVAS machines, to now, where it's beginning to prepare for the general elections next weekend. So we do have a lot of optimism that the fears of the section of the political class that the BVAS is not going to be adequate or Nigeria is not ready for it will be unfounded.
Part of your recommendations includes the fact that INEC need to provide updates on the recently conducted hardware testing and providing adequate information of voter education on the BVAS in order to bridge the knowledge gap within the populace. you reached out to INEC on this, and is INEC actually working on these recommendations?
Well, yeah, we have reached out to INEC on our recommendations, and well, there's indication they have said that they will be making their reports public. So we're hoping and waiting for them to make good on their word, making reports to publicize the reports they're on the setting and testing of the beavers and mock accreditation. Because all that is in the public domain so far is our own report of observation, which unfortunately is limited because, as we noted in our report, there are certain states where we're not allowed to observe the report, the mock accreditation and the beavers testing.
Let's look at another issue that the election phase. We've seen threats of insecurity within volatile states. What's your take on the level of insecurity at this point in time? And do you see that impacting on the elections come February?
Yeah, all right, so the insecurity is something of a concern for us, and it's one of the factors we captured in our reports, election manipulation risk index, where we index the risk of election manipulation or factors that could affect the elections negatively across the country. And in many states, insecurity was one of the things that we captured as a threat to the elections. So it's anyone who has followed Nigeria, even at a casual level, were able to tell regions in Nigeria where there has been a lot of insecurity. In some places where there have been targeted attacks on INEC facilities and officials, a lot of arson, and in some sad occurrences, killings of INEC officials. So this are a thing of concern for us, and not only us, I will say, I think even for INEC and other security agencies and all election stakeholders. So the objective of on our own part of civil society, tools such as the EMRI, and for INEC and other election stakeholders where they have multi-stakeholder groups such as I can't remember the name of the acronym, but it's ICCES, where basically it brings together INEC and security agencies to discuss security challenges around elections. I believe it should be top priority for them to look at how they prevent or stop this insecurity from impacting negatively on the elections.
Part of your report identified voter suppression and tampering of voter registers as factors that may impact the credibility of the polls. The report indicated that voter turnout is one form of inclusion of unqualified persons that inevitably compromises the electoral outcomes. What has been done with regards to this? Do you feel INEC has done enough in order to prevent this?
Well, what we have so far is of INEC's assurances that only bona fide Nigerian citizens are voting, and only those who are of age. If you remember, before the collection of PVC started, INEC opened a window for claims and objections to the voters register. Unfortunately, the process itself was flawed in the sense of you have to bring proof that someone on the voter register is underage, and that proof will be via birth certificate. And it's flawed in the sense of many times you see people who are evidently underage have birth certificate because you're not their parent or their parents. So so those kind of loopholes is very likely to be exploited. So these are things of concern that we've noted. And even where INEC says, well, the objections, that wasn't enough in terms of flagging these underage voters for the election.
What about the prosecution of INEC officials that are involved in manipulating voter registers? Do you see INEC taking more proactive actions as far as this is concerned?
To an extent, I do see that. I've seen in cases where INEC has prosecuted officials in elections where they were found or they suspected to have been involved in election malpractice. I think it's this Cross River or somewhere in the South where a returning officer was prosecuted and was sentenced, given a prison term. So these are really good steps as they send enough warning message to others to not get involved in that. However, even by INEC's admission, it also has its own capacity issues, and that's why we need to have the Election Officers Commission, being the bill passed into law that will empower the commission to go after people such as that who have been involved in election offenses, and also even other election offenses that are outside from persons outside INEC, such as vote buying, or those that are involved in violence that can elections, and the beneficiaries of those. Because one thing to note is, even if I'm a returning officer and I am unscrupulous, not the ultimate beneficiary. The ultimate beneficiaries of that election fraud need to also face punishment to send a strong message so that to those who will be running for office tomorrow to not get involved in those.
We've experienced unending economic instabilities in recent times, which may overlap well with the election. And just this morning, the Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari, the extensions of deadline on some of the old Naira notes, and with this, the Naira redesign policy that's creating a lot of tensions. And you see this impacting towards anytime soon?
I believe that after the elections, it will get better. And while I do understand the need for the Naira redesign policy, I think these are teething problems, unfortunately, where people have to make those adjustments. Now, in next month and more, things we should get better in regarding this issue.
Mike, let's look at this so-called Naira redesign, this policy itself. Part of the reasons being alluded to by the government is to prevent vote buying, as the case may be. Your organization have observed the elections in recent times. I mean, at least you observed the Ekiti state elections where vote buying was so rampant. And do you see this playing out again? And do you see this policy actually putting an end to the vote buying concerns?
So I do believe that this will make it more difficult for vote buying. It won't eliminate, but it will make it more difficult in terms of the amount of cash that's available for politicians to use to buy votes. Think about the fact that CBN mopped up 2 trillion naira and injected only 300 billion naira back into the system. So that really reduces the amount of cash in circulation. Because the thing about vote buying is a cash transaction, even though some persons have said, oh, it may just make politicians to use foreign currency to do vote buying. I do not see that happening, because I believe that even it will even go beyond their own budget. A counter argument to that has been that it may also make vote buying easier, because when persons haven't seen cash, people that use cash predominantly for transactions haven't seen cash in about a month, it will also reduce the amount they may demand to sell their votes. It could be maybe if it's 5,000 naira previously, it could be as little as 1,000 naira now, even though I do not share that view. And I also think that perhaps that even the anger felt by citizens may even make them turn against politicians who try to buy votes. But I do see this severely limiting the ability of politicians to buy votes.
Yeah, you're also aware that politicians are also strategizing as far as this is concerned. We've had reports of some parties, officials actually getting account numbers of voters. I mean, is that also a troubling concern?
Well, of course, politicians will always strategize. I mean, they always strategize to find workarounds on these issues. Yes,